We got a few people joining virtually, and then there's a bunch of us here at the recovery spa. We've got some recovery greens and some hydrodurants that we're sampling tonight for those of you that are here. So if you have any questions on either of those, we can touch on that after Greg's finished up as well. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it to you, Greg. The show's all yours, man.
Okay, excellent. So if anybody has any questions, just interrupt me. It's a small enough group that we can ask questions. So again, thank you everybody for showing up tonight. I appreciate it. I'm sure most of you, have a basic knowledge of F2C. We've been around for about 20 years as a brand and a company. Only been available really in conventional retail for just the last few years, just before COVID. We have been more of a private label brand where we supplied pro sporting teams, about 80% of the global Olympic teams, more of that kind of business under the F2C. We also had a retail brand called PhD at one point as well, which we sold kind of in late 2018, which some of you might have remembered PhD. We did a little bit of stuff in the Penticton area. And I think the first year we did Apple Try in Kelowna, it was under the PhD label. But that's, kind of long gone now. We sold off that part of the brand. And, F2C is, really was the main company. That's what held all of our intellectual properties, and all of our clinicals and patents were held under F2C. So, I guess probably the first thing, and probably one of the more exciting things, and the differences between us and some of the other guys, is that we are a Canadian-based company. So we are based in Vancouver. A couple of things that means is, I guess, security of product, and we're seeing that now over the last couple of days. I'm sure you guys have all heard that Morton gels have been basically pulled off the shelves in Canada because they finally got caught. They have no NHP, and the reality of them ever getting an NHP license is pretty slim. So they're off the shelves currently, or in the midst of getting pulled off the shelves. And Ironman is now searching for a new nutrition partner. So we have had some conversations. We were, and a few of you that I've talked to at events, know that back in 2000, when Ironman first announced it was coming back to Penticton. We had went through the whole process with Ironman to do a long-term, all of Canada deal with all the Canadian Ironman races, which, once COVID's, kind of got underway, everything kind of went sideways. Ironman really fired everybody that was involved corporately with the company. And, 9 months later, we were never able to get a contract in place, and they ended up just doing global deals across all markets in all countries with the same product, which was the easiest thing for them, not the greatest thing for the people doing the events. So we are certainly, they've reached back out to us again, to open up conversations. I don't know where that will end up going, but I guess we'll entertain and see what happens with that. But I guess a couple of the things that really makes stuff made in Canada a little different. A lot of people have that myth that, American product is better, it's more cutting edge, it's more all kinds of things, which is really the opposite in reality. In Canada, when something is actually manufactured here, the rules that we have to follow as a Canadian manufacturer are 10 times what the US. In the US market, you never have to test a product. You can build a nutritional product purely off of a paper assay that you would get from the raw material supplier, wherever they happen to be, that says, trust me, as an example, trust me, this is 90% sodium citrate. Trust me, there's no heavy metals. Trust me, there's no bacteria. In the US market, you can build a whole product based purely on a piece of paper and never physically test the product. We have, as a manufacturer, have our own standard operating procedures, or SOPs, that actually require us to test more than what Health Canada requires. But what it does is it ensures, what you're getting is really what you expect to be getting. Just a scary statistical number for you. We have a test that we do when we first bring a raw material in. So say if we're going to build glycodurants, As we bring in all those raw materials, we would take that C of A from the manufacturer, goes into a file folder, and we send it back out to the lab again. The first thing we look at is an identification testing. So we basically send it to identify, because you can imagine everything comes in a 45-gallon drum and it's a white powder. Whether it doesn't matter what it is, it's all white powder in a drum. So, you could unfortunately get almost anything in that drum. So, as a manufacturer, we pre-test everything. So we do identification testing to ensure that, if we ordered 90% sodium citrate, that's what's in that drum is actually 90% sodium citrate. Again, in the US market, they would just trust that manufacturer to say, well, the guy said it's really sodium citrate, so that must be what it is. Last year, we refused 51% of the material that we got into our plant was not what it said it was and was not what we ordered. We had an instance just a couple of weeks ago where we had a material come in. It was a 45-gallon drum of white powder that our cost on it was $42,000. It was a nutraceutical ingredient. That the barrel had $200 worth of white rice flour in it. If you didn't test it, you'd never know. So it's just some of the advantages of of dealing with manufacturers that have specific standard operating procedures and do the testing. On top of that, another 10% of the material that actually passed the testing failed either micros or heavy metals, and that was against what was their C of A said that no, it's clean, and another 10% failed that. So testing is crucially important. It's can't say enough about the testing procedures that have to be followed. Our facilities, both of our manufacturing plants, are Informed Sport certified and NSF for sport certified. Basically what that means is they come into the manufacturing plant and they actually swab. We have to go through random testings, a minimum of twice a year with both of these companies. We're not allowed to make any product in our plant that would contain any ingredient that is on the WADA banned substance list. So it eliminates any of the chances of cross-contamination and potential, at least from our end, any potential positive testing. They come through our plant, they swab, they do, Informed Sport is the most thorough one, but they'll come through and they'll do 300 swabs in our plant. They'll swab the pallet racking in the warehouse. They swab all the air filters, up in the ducting system, looking for any type of cross-contamination, any type of banned substances. So our plant is both of those certified. And then we also do third-party testing on all finished product to ensure that, there is no tainted, that sodium citrate that we got in hasn't been tainted, because that's, sodium citrate or sodium in general is one of the biggest contributors to failed drug tests with athletes. If you remember back a few years ago, there was a whole rash of Ironman pros that were busted, like Rebecca Keat as an example. She was a top Australian Ironman athlete and tested positive. Hers was tainted sodium inside a nutritional supplement from one of the major brands in the industry, but they don't do drug testing. They didn't purposely do it, but the raw material that they got from the supplier was tainted with a banned substance. So we go through all of those testing procedures just to ensure that, what you're getting is the best that it can possibly be. Anybody have any questions at all on that kind of stuff? Okay. Let's talk about product coming up and the race season. So obviously we're on course at a lot. You can see I'm wearing the Victoria Half hat. So we are the on-course nutrition for the Victoria Half. We have been for the last year as well for their first year. We will be on course again this year for the Victoria Half, which is a great race. It's on the original Ironman course. So if you guys are looking for kind of a midsummer race to do, it's a great one. Another great one that we're on course on is the Ironman 70.3 Calgary. That's the last licensed Ironman event basically in Canada or in North America. So as a licensee, they don't have to abide by the contract that Ironman signed with Gatorade and Morton and other products like that. So they're allowed to use whatever they want. And we've been the on course for Calgary for the last 4 years. This will be our 5th year with those guys. So Again, everything that you get on that course would be our product. So as you go through the aid station, it is glycodurance, the same product that you guys would buy, in the store there. Glycodurance, I guess we should probably just dive into that one, is really one of the main race products. So a couple of the big differences, between glycodurance and some of the other conventional products, like a Gatorade or a Tailwind or Scratch, if you want to use that one as an example. Our product is 100% corn-free. Everything that we do now is 100% corn-free. We've removed all corn from everything that we manufacture. So that's all your glucoses, fructoses, maltodextrins. Basically, 99% of the other products in the industry are corn-based carbohydrates. A couple of the huge disadvantages of corn, once it's processed and milled, one is it comes back acidic. So, basically sits in an acidic level to start with as a raw powder. Typically the corn, which would be a maltodextrin or a glucose or a fructose, is sitting typically in around a 4 to a 4.5 pH. The osmolality of that material is also very large. So the particle size of the corn, that base kind of carbohydrate and sugar, is a very large particle. And it also contains a fairly significant amount of sugar. So not just obviously it's a carbohydrate, but containing as much as 96% sugar content, which triggers, again, a lot of, insulin, GI issues with a lot of people. Our product, glycodurance, is an enzymatic fermentation of potato and rice. So we use a North American grown, both potato and rice. Our potatoes come out of Idaho, and all of our rice comes out of Northern California. So it's a domestic-based product. We're not certified organic yet, but we are in process. So all of the fields and this material that we're buying in both rice and potato, actually our rice is certified organic now, but we can't make a certified organic claim yet till the potato is as well. But it's certainly a transitional process for us. Our plant is a certified organic manufacturing facility. So once we're able to maintain enough of the percentage of ingredients, we'll be able to make an organic claim as well. But basically what we do is we take that potato and rice, it's milled at about 12% milling, grinding basically. It's then put into a large stainless steel vat. It's about a 5,000 gallon vat. We add enzymes to it. The vat is then sealed, and it basically is on a computerized rotation axis. It basically spins 360 degrees every 24 hours. And it goes through basically an 8-week fermenting process in which a couple of different things happen. First, when it comes out of the vat, the pH level of the product is sitting at about a 13.6. So very, very alkaline product. The other thing that it does during that fermentation process is it uncouples the sugar particle from the carbohydrate particle. Then we go through the rest of the milling, and then we go through a filtering process. And we have a patented centrifugal extraction method that we use for a lot of our different products. But, for the carb base and glycodurance, we basically change out the filters on the outside of this rotation drum. And then what we do is basically spin the carbohydrate through these set of 17 different filters. And what that does is basically pulls the sugar out, leaving us just the long chain carbohydrate. We then take the sugar and we make gummy bears for kids out of the sugar. A combination of the sugar from that product as well as the fibers that come out of the recovery greens that you guys are trying tonight is what we use as a base for gummy bears that we make for kids. But what you're left with is basically a long chain carbohydrate that has 0 grams of sugar. So you're not getting any of the insulin spiking at all. And it creates a very, very tiny particle size. So the osmolality, or the measurement of that solid particle, once mixed in water, so in a solution mix based on a 300 calorie bottle or 300 calorie mix, the glycodurance has a finished osmolality or particle size of 180, which is about the same size as water. The blood in our body ranges between 220 and 240. So this is the same as water, with all those carbohydrates and with all those electrolytes and all those other ingredients. So it's a very, very tiny particle. In comparison, if you compare it to Gatorade as an example, your Gatorade Endurance, calculated out at a 300 calorie bottle of that is about 2,300. So it's well over 10 times larger in size. One of the issues with the larger size is it takes much more to digest. So as it goes into the gut, the larger the particle, the slower the digestion is, the more chance of GI issues. Also, when you're dealing with a product like a Gatorade or some of these other long chain carbs that already start acidic, you as an athlete, when you're coming up to that race day, getting ready to, travel to Arizona for Ironman Arizona, about a week out from that race, you're going to be thinking, oh man, am I ready to do this? Geez, I'm going to have to ship my bike. Is it going to get there in one piece? You get all of these stresses that happen. That stress produces cortisol, which every night as you go through the hormone cycle gets dumped out of your body and goes to make your body more acidic. So more cortisol, the more acidic you will be. One of the things with glycodurants is it actually helps neutralize that acidity, almost like taking, for lack of a better word, it's like taking Tums. You see a lot of people, in the start of the morning, they pop a whole bunch of Tums to try to neutralize the pH, all the acidity in their gut. Because again, as that race, once you've got to that start line and that gun goes off, you get that huge adrenaline surge. About 20 minutes later, that adrenaline surge gets converted to cortisol and gets dumped back into your body, which has a pretty significant effect on the pH level of the stomach. So one of the things, just, kind of an interesting story, we did a clinical back in 2019 at Ironman Canada, where we're able to test 100 athletes and do blood work on them that were pulled off the course or dropped out of the race. Typically, the biggest drop off is about 3K into the run. So they've got off the bike, they've, chugged Gatorade and gels and all kinds of other crap on the bike for 6 or 7 hours. And I'm sure you've all seen this, you get off that bike and you look like you're 7 months pregnant. We call it Gatorade belly. You're all bloated from that Gatorade or those carbohydrates that you've put in there. And what creates that bloating is basically fermentation. You're putting in, you're putting whiskey basically into the belly. You're putting the corn in, those corn-based carbohydrates, that simple sugar, and you've got a really acidic environment, and it actually starts to break down in the belly, which then creates all the bloating and the gassing. So one of the statistical numbers that we found during this testing at Ironman, after doing the blood work on the 100 athletes that got pulled off the course, 99 of those 100 had a measurable alcohol content in their system. Not that they were necessarily drunk, but it showed that fermentation process of those corn-based carbohydrates. So that's one of the things that's eliminated with glycodurants is you typically don't get any GI issues at all because it is digested so quickly. It is the fastest gut emptying of any carbohydrate in the industry at this point. Electrolyte-wise, our electrolytes that are used in glycodurants are another one of our patents. It's a multi-stage patent. The initial clinicals were done in 2018. We work with a lot of the tour teams in Europe, and we had 60 members, 20 from 3 different tour teams that were involved in the clinical. We would start the day, it was basically on their long ride day. They would start with an empty stomach. We would do an initial blood draw on an empty gut. Then we left a toggle basically in their arm. They would stop every 20 minutes, and we would do another blood draw. What they would consume, again, starting on an empty gut, they were using a 300-calorie bottle of glycodurants every hour during their 5-hour ride. So in the end of the day, we would do 19 blood draws in total from each of the 60 athletes. It would go back to the lab. We'd look at pH levels, lactic acid levels, hydration levels, absorption levels of all the nutrients throughout the ride. And then we would do it, tweak the formula for next week and do it all over again. And we did that for 26 weeks to get to the electrolyte blend that we're currently using in all of our products. With that, you're going to see something that's kind of unique. So we use sodium citrate, where most of the brands in the industry use sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is cheap, and that's really why most of the companies will use it. Citrate is about 10.5 times the cost of what chloride would be, but it's absorbed 350% better without the GI issues that people typically experience with sodium chloride. And it also doesn't taste bad. To put a large amount of sodium chloride, if any of you guys have tasted like a base salt or something like that out of a tube, it's pretty yucky tasting, the chloride. Potassium-wise, we use potassium citrate. And then the big one is the magnesium. We have a patent on our magnesium, so we are the patent holder for magnesium bisglycinate. It's something that we developed. It's basically a different source of magnesium. Basically, everything in the industry is magnesium citrate or a chelated form of magnesium, which, if you look at most electrolyte products in the industry, they use very, very little magnesium. You'll see, you look at a Gatorade label, we'll say 435 milligrams of sodium chloride, 70 milligrams of potassium, and about 5 milligrams of magnesium. The reason why they don't put any magnesium in there is because of the conventional sources that are available, like a magnesium citrate will work as a laxative over a period of time for, during a race. So if I gave, you a 500 milligram magnesium capsule, you swallow that down, you would be fine with that. You'd have no digestive issues. I'm sure lots of you guys take that at night anyways before you go to bed. But if I took that 500 milligram capsule of magnesium citrate, opened it up, put it into 2 water bottles, and told you to drink that, 1 water bottle in the first hour, the second water bottle the next hour, you'd likely be on the toilet before you finish the second bottle, because that works as a laxative when it's taken that way. So with the bisglycinate, it's absorbed about 440% better than a citrate without any GI issues. It allows us to dramatically increase the magnesium, which in turn increases the absorption rates of the sodium significantly. The other ingredient that we add to it is another one of our patents. It's called sustellin. Sustellin is the fermentation, so it goes through the same fermenting process that we do with the actual potato and the rice. It's a fermentation of the amino acids alanine and glutamine. And when they ferment it together, it changes the structure of those amino acids. And basically what it does is that amino acid will bind on to the water. So any inbound water or the water that you're using to mix glycodurants with, the sustellin will bind onto the actual water particle. And as it passes from the gut to the intestine, the body, in really simple terms, will pull the carbohydrates off, pull the electrolytes off, leaving you the water particle. The sustellin stays bound to the water and increases the rate of hydration of the water particle by 27%. So it works like a little jet engine attached to that water particle itself. We also make sustellin available individually as well. So it's something that you can add. It's a very, very, very tiny dose. Like I think, one little bag of it is like 200 servings. It doesn't take very much of it to work, but you can add that to any water that you're taking, even add it to, the standard water that you're drinking at your desk every day, and it'll increase the hydration of that water by up to 27%. So a couple other things that you can do with glycodurants, it's something that's become really popular over the last couple of years, is super bottles. And that's, it's kind of come from the fact of, some uncertainty as what's going to be on courses. And, just the fact that, on an Ironman race, you're basically stuck with Gatorade, or in Canada, you're stuck with 7-Eleven Gatorade, which is even worse. So a lot of people have moved over to carrying their own nutrition with them. So one of the things that you can do with glycodurants is actually make what we call a super bottle, which is something that you can't do with most other carbohydrate products, especially other corn-based carbs, because the corn basically thickens. So if you tried to do really anything more than about a 400 calorie bottle with most carb products in the industry, about an hour later, you would see the thickness of that product is changed by about 50%, which makes it really hard to get it down. Glycodurants, you can make up to, in a standard water bottle, you can make 1,000 calories in a standard water bottle, and it still be usable and drinkable. So one of the things that you'll see, and we have all the instructions on the back of the bags on how to make super bottles, but you'll see that we have some different flavors of products. We do lemon, lime, strawberry, mango, and green apple as a flavored, and then we do unflavored versions. So what we typically say if you're going to make a super bottle is, don't mix 10 scoops of strawberry kiwi in one bottle, because it's just going to be too sweet. It's going to be too strong. That's why we do the unflavored. It's exactly the same nutritional profile without any flavor at all. It tastes like water. So what we typically say, if you're going to do super bottle, like an 800 calorie or 1,000 calorie bottle, you would do, 6 or 8 scoops of unflavored, and 1 or 2 scoops or 4 scoops, depending on your numbers you're looking for, of flavored product, or even less. it gives you the opportunity to find a flavor that you truly like. A lot of athletes, they may start a race, using a flavor, but near the end of the race, they're moving over to purely unflavored product. They use just all unflavored glyco because flavor fatigue is a huge issue. If you're sweeted out or you've tasted, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, you get to, 3/4 of the way through the race and you go, I just can't drink anything else, any other lemon flavored anything. It gives you an opportunity to move to an unflavored style product. We also have a product called Glycodurance Raw. So the raw is just the carbohydrate and the sustalan without any electrolytes. So what that does is it allows you to fine tune a little bit on how you're building your bottles. If you find, you just don't necessarily you're not a heavy sweater, and I would encourage everybody, especially if you're doing some of these longer races, get a sweat test done. Josh, I can connect you with, if you need it, with a couple different places that do them. We will probably be doing sweat tests within a year. We had it kind of ready to go at in 2020. We had developed a sweat test, but then with COVID, and just even with the uncertainty that we went through last year, we've just decided let's wait another year till everything is kind of back to normal before we make that investment of doing an actual sweat test for people. But there's a few companies out there doing it now. So find out, what you sweat, because you may be shocked. You may find that, hey, I'm a really heavy sodium sweater, but, I sweat almost no magnesium or potassium. So I encourage you to get, especially in the longer races, get a sweat test done. It's an easy tool. Josh can help guide you through that and, kind of fine tune what you're using. But in general, glycodurance is built for the masses. It's for most people, they won't have to do anything. It works exactly the way it is. But there are some people that, that may, use an extraordinarily large amount of calories. We had one, local pro, even though she's, 5'3", and 120 pounds, she used 450 calories an hour. She consumed, a huge amount of calories, which is one of the things that really helped her perform. But she found that she didn't need the magnesium. She was taking too much magnesium, and she was finding that she was getting some, not during the race, and never got, diarrhea or any issues, but she would have, post-race, some grumbly stomach. Just made a lot of noise, but never really, never erupted to any actual issues. But it just showed that she didn't really need the amount of magnesium that was there. So what she used was basically a split. She used, if she was making an 800-calorie bottle, she would do 4 scoops of regular glycodurance. She would do 4 scoops of raw. And then she would add our product called electrodurance, which is basically just the electrolytes by themselves that are inside glycodurance. Again, predominantly the sodium, so it would have the same dosage per serving as glycodurance does, which is 180 milligrams of elemental sodium per scoop, but it only has 10 milligrams of both magnesium and potassium. So it drops down those 2 quantities significantly. So that's another great one to use as well. So it allows you to really fine tune your nutrition and staying all within, kind of the same family, which is really important. The reason why, and it's not just because I want to sell you more product, but it's the fact that the way things are charged, every company does things a little different. And a lot of companies really don't even know, how they charge their electrolytes. So all of our electrolytes that we use in all of our products are all charged exactly the same way. So they can be used, together without any interaction or potential interactions. But if you remember back to, grade 5 science class, we used to play with magnets and push together the positives and negatives, and you could never get them together because they were always fighting each other. Electrolytes are exactly the same way in your system. If you're using positively and negatively charged electrolytes, it dramatically impedes your absorption rates of all of those electrolytes. So everything we do is charged the same way. Everything of all of our products can be used together without any concerns. Any questions at all? Somebody's got to have some kind of question of some sort. If you're doing super bottles, the one thing I always tell you, if you're going to do, 1,000 calorie super bottle, you need to drink more water. And that's really some of the advantages of doing super bottles is that, coming into an aid station, you can basically carry all your nutrition, on your bike for the whole race. And then all you need to worry about going into an aid station is grabbing water. So if you're doing super bottles, what I typically tell people is, take your standard, your standard water bottle, mark lines on it, so you know exactly what's in there. But basically do your math and go, hey, I'm going to be on the bike for 6 hours. My goal is 300 calories an hour. So, I need, for 6 hours, I need 1,800 calories to do the race. And then you basically do the math and go, okay, I'm going to carry, I've got 2 bottles on, I got 2 cages on the back. I'm going to throw another bottle at special needs. And so you just basically just break it down. You can go, okay, I need 1,800 calories for the day. So I'm going to do, 2 900 calorie bottles here, going to carry them with me. And then I'm going to do a spare 900 calorie bottle and throw it in my special needs, in your special needs bag. What I always tell people, if you're doing, you're going to do a super bottle and you're bringing your own nutrition, putting a bottle in special needs, if you don't need it, that's awesome. But how many times have you guys, I'm sure there's got to be somebody in this audience that's had a bottle spit out the back of your bike, as you cross over, railway tracks or cross over that silly cattle guard near Princeton. And it just spit a bottle out the back. So it's great to know that, hey, at least I know when I get to special needs, I got another bottle there. If you don't need it, it's the cheapest $20 insurance that you'll ever have.
And Greg,
yep.
Can you just touch on the magnesium? Was it the absorption or the ideal quantification? Like the ideal quantity of magnesium?
Yeah. So again, everybody is a little bit different, but what we built Glycodurance was kind of built around, it was built around 300 calories per hour. That's how we designed the product. So in the electrolytes of that, and again, I should have said this originally, but on our packaging, we do everything in our electrolytes in elemental amounts, which is what the actual amount of usable electrolyte is. So when you look at a packaging, it'll say like sodium, 180 milligrams of sodium per scoop of Glycodurance. Then beside it, you'll see the number 764, I believe it is. That's the input amount. So it takes 764 milligrams of input sodium to yield a usable amount of 180 milligrams of elemental. Every sodium is like that. But the problem is in the US market and even in the Canadian market in some aspects, companies will give you the input amount, not elemental. So when you look at a Gatorade bottle and it says, 465 milligrams of sodium, that's 465 milligrams of input. The yield on it is likely somewhere around 40 milligrams-ish. It's about 10% typically with chloride. But there is, there's essentially 100 different versions. You can get anywhere from 1% active to, about 80% active. It comes down to cost. The least amount, the lower the actual elemental amount, the cheaper it is. And unfortunately, that's what most brands, because they don't know any better. It's not that they're necessarily trying to cheat anybody. They just don't know the difference. And that's why most companies don't give you that, because they have no idea. I've talked to owners of other nutrition companies, that pretend they're electrolyte-based companies. And I say, what's your elemental versus, input amount? And his eyes glazed over. He had no friggin' idea what I was talking about. So, with the getting back to magnesium, with the Glycodurance, it's 100 milligrams of elemental magnesium citrate per scoop of Glycodurance. So in a 300 calorie bottle, that would be 300 milligrams of elemental that comes from 3,000 milligrams of input. That's kind of the average amount. If based on 300 calories, if you are going to bump that up and do a 400 calorie bottle, you may want to look at, fine tuning that magnesium if that you find, at the end of the day, you're getting some grumblies in the stomach, and it typically happens post race. Then you just adjust the magnesium, because that's likely what it is if you get the growlies.
So would that be where you would maybe take one scoop of the standard glycodurant out and just go for a scoop of raw?
Yeah, that's when you would insert the raw in, and potentially put in a scoop of electrodurants, because the electrodurants would then get your sodium back up there again, but just eliminating that magnesium.
Okay.
Because again, like I said, in glycodurants, it gives you 100 milligrams of elemental magnesium per scoop. In electrodurants, it's 10 milligrams of elemental, so it's 90% less, but the same amount of sodium. So you can keep your sodium levels up and just drop that magnesium and the potassium down. The other great thing, I don't know whether you've seen it, but with the electrodurants, we also have little tubes. Let's see, I don't think I have any here on the counter. But we have little tubes that are available as well for the electrodurants, which is something that's great. If you buy the product, you can ask, when you order, typically you'll always get, typically you get a tube with the bag. But you could also, and we'll make sure Josh has a stock of extra tubes there as well. You can always ask for extra tubes. What I always say is, it's, again, a cheap, easy backup. Take one of these little tubes, throw a piece of Velcro on it, stick it up under your aero bar pad, stick it in your pocket on your bike. So it's a great thing if you feel a cramp coming for some reason. You've got those extra electrolytes. You can put them orally directly into your mouth. You don't have to mix them with water. Just sprinkle a little bit directly into your mouth, or lick your thumb, and you basically stick it, pop the lid off the tube, shake it onto your thumb, lick it directly onto your tongue, which is something that we'd recommend on the run. You could use, 2 or 3 licks every 20 minutes directly on your tongue during the run, which is an easy way to get those electrolytes. And it's absorbed orally through the mouth. So don't wash it down, let it absorb orally through the mouth. It's your fastest absorption point. So again, it's a great backup. You'll feel, I'm sure you've all cramped at some point in racing. You're not really racing if you haven't cramped. If you feel that cramp coming, typically, a minute or two before you actually cramp, you feel the tingling in the calf, and that it's coming. Get those electrolytes in there, use a little bit of electrodurants right on your tongue, right in your mouth. And typically you won't actually cramp. You'll be able to beat it out if you can get it in there soon enough, because it's absorbed so quickly.
Okay. Greg, from Jerry, he said, lots of product. Where do we start? Everyone's different. Every race is different. I'm curious, what is best practice?
So, what I typically say, anything over 90 minutes. So we have hydrodurants and we have glycodurants. Those are kind of your two main race carbohydrates. Hydrodurants is kind of anything under 90 minutes. You're on the pool deck. That's a great one, to use on the pool deck. It's not high calorie. That one is more about hydration and electrolytes. You don't necessarily, under 90 minutes, you really don't need the extra calories, but you need that hydration and you need those electrolytes. So Hydra is a great product for that. Out for just a short run, again, you don't necessarily need the calories. Anything over 90 minutes, whether it's training or racing, I would certainly, and even on a race day, even if you're just doing, a sprint, I would still use glycodurants. It's just, it's a higher pH, more alkaline, and it does have some fuel. You're still, at a race pace, you're still going to need those extra calories. But, for just training, on the pool deck, Hydra is a great product. So kind of rule of thumb, under 90 minutes is Hydra, over 90 minutes, it would be your glycodurants. So really glyco is probably the key to everything. You start with the glycodurants, and then you can fine tune from there as you ramp up your quantities. You can adjust, you can add raw to it, you can add extra electrolytes to it. You have the flexibility of that. And then the other real key thing, at this time of year, especially when we're, in the training, we're building up for something, is the proper recovery. We do a couple of different recovery style products. What I typically say to people is, rule of thumb, if you're at home, you're training at home because there's snow on the ground and you can't ride outside, you're doing your 3-hour bike ride or 4-hour bike ride. When you're done the ride, what you would use in a perfect scenario, as soon as you've completed that ride, within the first 20 minutes, you would consume another serving of carbohydrates, whether you do another serving of glycodurants, or, if you want to use food, if you're at home, use half a sweet potato, do a thing of, rice, just without anything on it. You want another serving of carbohydrates. So all carbs and no protein. And then you wait 20 minutes and then you take all protein and no carbs. So you could use PharmaPure, or if you're vegan, you would use our Vegan Pure product. That's just straight protein, basically no carbs, no fat, fast absorption. So you could use that. You could use chicken breast. You could use, just a protein source. But if you can separate out in your recovery, if you could separate out your carbs and your protein, during that recovery stage, you'll improve the absorption rates of both by about, up to 40%. Again, depending on the individual person. But that's the ideal way for recovery. And that's really a crucial thing right now as you guys are training and, getting those miles in on the bike, is you've got to recover. You got to make sure that, you're getting, the proper fuel back in your body by getting those extra carbs in there in your recovery mode. That refills glycogen stores, which stops a lot of the lactic acid dumping that you'll experience, over the next few hours and overnight. It dramatically improves that lactic acid dump, which again makes the next day significantly better. It makes you able to train at a significant pace again, continually, one right after another, without a lot of that muscle fatigue and muscle, aches and pains that you get from lactic acid. The other thing that you do is basically refill those protein bellies, which allows that protein in the system to repair the muscles. Because you got to remember, it's like you're tearing it. As you're training, as you're working, you're tearing those muscles. You've got to repair those muscles afterwards, and getting that quality protein source in there is really key for that. So we have, like I said, a couple of different plain protein options. The PharmaPure is a Canadian grass-fed whey protein isolate. It's all protein, no carbs, no fat. It's the highest yielding protein of anything currently in the industry. It goes through both the isolation process, and then it goes through our patented centrifugal extraction unit, removing all the remaining lactose, fat, and carbs out of it. So even though it is a dairy-based protein, and it is Canadian dairy, we are one of the very, very few that uses Canadian dairy, comes out of the Fraser Valley. Most of the dairy and most of the whey proteins you see in the industry are US dairy, which has all kinds of growth hormones and BHBs and other kind of nasty things inside it. So we are using Canadian dairy, which is the best in the world, really. So we have that available in 5 different flavors. It mixes instantly, tastes really good. It's clean, about the cleanest you'll find. No artificial flavors, colors, sweeteners, or preservatives in any of our product. And then if you're vegan, we do 2 different vegan options. Again, a little different from most of the other vegan products. If anybody out there has used guys like Vega and things like that, Vega is about 98% pea protein. Pea is, at the time, when we developed, and I made the original Vega. I actually manufactured Vega for the first, 8 years that they were in business. Back then, which is over 20 years ago now, well over 20 years, pea protein was the only really available protein that was isolated that would actually mix in water back in the day. So that's what so many, and it's cheap. And that's what most things are made out of. Like I said, Vega is over 90% pea. The problem with pea protein is you're missing 2 of the amino acids completely in it. It's not a complete protein source. And some of the amino acids aren't really that well balanced. What we use is a combination of Canadian hemp, rice, pea, chia, and flax. So our pea content is less than 12% pea. It's predominantly hemp protein at over 60% hemp. And we are 100% certified organic in that product. So every ingredient is certified organic. And the hemp, the pea is Canadian grown. The rices and the quinoa and the flax are out of California. And I guess the flax is actually out of Washington State. But it is all domestically provided, where most of the pea protein conventionally available now, like the stuff that's in Vega currently, is all coming out of China. I certainly believe in, trying to keep, the quality here. We know that in Canada, we make the best. In North America, US is probably the second best. At least we kind of have a way of checking our sources and knowing where the stuff comes from. So that's the straight protein options. And then, if you're busy, you don't have an option, you don't have the time to separate out your carbs and your proteins. We have a product called Rehab 3-to-1 Complete. And that's basically a 3-part carbohydrate, 1-part protein. It's an all-in-one style formula. So it utilizes the 5 different types of protein in there. So we have both a vegan and a non-vegan version. So the non-vegan will use the grass-fed whey protein isolate, so the same protein that's in our PharmaPure product, whey protein concentrate, a pure micellular casein, cage-free egg white protein, and a hydrolyzed whey protein. It all goes through the centrifugal extraction unit. It removes all the lactose, the fat out, and the carbs out of the protein sources. Then we add in the carb source from glycodurance, so the potato and rice-based carb in there. And then we add basically a serving and a half of our electrolyte blend in there as well. So it's kind of an and sustalan. So it's kind of an all-in-one formula. We do that, like I said, in the dairy or the whey-based product. And then we also do it in a vegan version, again, using our vegan protein blend. So the hemp, rice, pea, chia, and flax. Then the glycodurance carb, the potato and the rice, the electrolytes, and the sustalan. So that basically is a 250 calories in a serving. 3-to-1 ratio is kind of an all-in-one. It's quick, it's easy. You can put it in a shaker cup, put the powder in ahead of time, put the powder in a Ziploc bag if you want. If you need a shaker cup, we have some great shaker cups. I can send you a case of shaker cups next time you place an order too, Josh. So you've got some there, and just give them out to anybody that wants them. They're a really cool shaker where you can put the water in the bottom. You can put all your protein in the top, and it keeps it completely separate until you're ready to use it. Then you just spin the top down, the protein drops into the water, and you shake it. So it's a great little shaker cup. So you can just ask Josh. I'll send you some on your next order, Josh. So that's kind of recovery. Then we've got some specialty nutrients for recovery as well. So we have, the amino acid glutamine, which again has shown a lot of clinical studies, showing some really great advantages in the recovery mode. We do a branched chain amino acid, which is, again, great for recovery. It's also really good in pre-workout, kind of before your race happens, in that 30 minutes prior to the race. By taking a serving of a branched chain amino acid will reduce the amount of lactic acid that your body produces by about 30%. So there's definitely some performance advantages pre-race and post-race, but we don't recommend using a branched chain amino during the race. You'll see a lot of brands, like Base and a few of those guys will add branched chains, into their race fuel. There is no scientific evidence that shows any type of an advantage at all to take it during the race. There's much more of a risk of GI issues than any type of benefit. So your equation, return on investment there, is just not there to take a branched chain during the event itself, but great post and pre-your event. The amino acids, both the glutamine, the branched chain aminos, we actually ferment those at our facility. So they are the only amino acids fermented in North America. If you go to any health food store or any supplement store and buy, a glutamine, a branched chain amino, a creatine, they're all coming from China. Everything in the market comes from, everything in amino acids, unless it comes from us, is coming from China. Most of the stuff coming out of China, the amino acids, they ferment them on duck feathers. So basically, after the culling of the ducks, when they kill the ducks to make our famous Peking chicken, all those duck feathers is what they grow the amino acids on, because there's a protein already in the feathers. They then grow the amino acids on the feathers and then use solvents to wash them off after the fact. All of our amino acids are grown on organic red beets. So it's a clean source, and we use a water extraction to remove the amino acids off of the red beets. And then we actually extract the beets for the active citrulline out of the beet.
Great. Could you touch a little bit on the Endurance 5 one?
Sure. So endurance 5-to-1, again, kind of like the title says, it's a 5-part carbohydrate, 1 part protein. So that's a really good product. It's a really good morning breakfast. You see a lot of people, doing races, and I'll jump back to more Ironman style races. You see them, they have this crazy regimen. They're not going to eat a salad for 3 days prior to the race because they didn't want that extra fiber that's in the salad. But then come race morning, they have a bowl of oatmeal and a bagel and 3 bananas, which they just consume more fiber, the morning of the race than they would have consumed, eating huge salads every day leading up to it. So, the endurance 5-to-1 is a great balance. It gives you that 5-part carb, 1-part protein. It utilizes the carb and glycodurants, the potato and rice as your carb source. So it's all clean carbs without the sugar content. It has the full serving of electrolytes in it. It has the sustalan in it. It's a really good balance. It's also a good product to use on training. If you're out for that long training ride and you just need those extra calories, you're not racing at, a race pace. You're not at, elevated heart rate. You're just out there putting those miles in. You can use the 5-to-1 for that because, in a standard bike bottle, just using the recommended dosage on the packaging, it'll give you a 700 calorie bottle. So again, it's fairly calorie dense. You are getting some protein. We typically don't recommend, just like, adding branched chain aminos, we don't recommend using protein during a race unless you're doing something like an Ultraman or an ultra marathon or an ultra trail race, something that, typically you've got a little bit lower heart rate. You're not running at, that peak heart rate. We found that there's just the return on investment, the risk of GI issues will outweigh any type of benefit in a shorter, even, and we say short with an Ironman distance, it's really not short, but at that, you're typically running at fairly high heart rates. So we just don't recommend adding protein. So it's a good one to use pre-race. And then you would use the 3-to-1 post-race. But typically we don't recommend that, during. But something like an ultra trail race, we had one of our athletes set the fastest known time on the Vermont Trail, which is, it was 6 days she was out there. And that's all she used was endurance 5-to-1. She took 72 bottles of endurance 5-to-1 during that race. We had another athlete last summer that did set the world record on the 24-hour, the 36, the 42, and the 72-hour. So it's basically a measured 72 hours. How many kilometers can you run in 72 hours? And she ran, over 700 kilometers and set the new record, female record, nonstop. And she used endurance 5-to-1 and glycodurants. And that's all she consumed in that.
Greg, I got a question going back to the BCAAs.
Yep.
Could you just a little bit explanation on how it reduces blood lactate? Is it production rate or resynthesis rate?
It's production rate. So it kind of works similar to, a fairly high dose of beta alanine, in which it basically kind of tricks the body as it processes those amino acids. It basically stops the body from producing, not all the lactic acid, but, again, a fairly significant amount of the lactic acid is buffered during that process. It works well. It's a good alternative, to those mega dosages of beta alanine that some people take.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody got any other questions?
I think we're out of questions here at the spa. Anybody on the live on the Zoom? Any questions? And we got Jerry's last question in there.
Anybody has any other ones, just, connect with Josh. He can send me a message on it. I'm not traveling for the next couple of weeks at least, so I'm around fairly locally. So, we'll get the questions answered pretty promptly for you.
One last thing, could you touch on recovery greens?
Sure. So recovery greens, it's kind of a cool product. it utilizes a few. You might remember our Pharma Greens that were, at one point our Pharma Greens was the #1 selling greens product in Canada. It was a unique product. We had multiple patents on it. The challenge that we ran into during COVID was supply chain issues. We couldn't get 2 of the raw materials that was in Pharma Greens. So because it's patented and the formula is patented and the production method's patented, it didn't allow us to substitute or swap out those ingredients. So that's kind of where Recovery Greens came from. Pharma Greens should be back again within the next few months. We basically grew those 2 particular ingredients ourselves, and they're just going through kind of the drying and the processing part of that right at the moment. But basically, Recovery Greens utilizes essentially the same greens vegetable base that we use in Pharma Greens. And kind of the method that we use on that, which is different from all the other greens in the industry, is it's a flash frozen method. So all the vegetables are frozen within 36 hours of picking. They're brought back to the plant, and they're ground frozen. So basically they're milled and then they're blended into the actual, we call it pharmacy. So the actual ratios for the actual product, it's all done as a blend at that point, still frozen in just the raw powder, and then it's stored. And then once we're getting ready to make a product, it basically gets water added to it, and then it goes into the centrifugal extraction unit and gets put through a series of 18 different filters in the extraction unit. And what that's doing is basically pulling out all the fibers and the nitrates out of the vegetables, leaving just the active lignans, flavonoids, vitamins, and minerals. Like I mentioned, we use the fibers and the nitrates from the vegetables along with the sugar from glycoderants to make gummy bears for kids, so we don't waste anything out of it. But what we're doing is eliminating all the ingredients that can trigger an insulin response, eliminating all the sugars and basically the calories that are in most of the greens products. There's lots of really cool greens out there, but a lot of them have they all still have all the naturally occurring fibers and nitrates, which trigger insulin responses, which stop pH conversion in your body. So like Pharma Greens, you can use Recovery Greens first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and that will trigger the pH conversion process in your body. Basically, you take the greens on an empty stomach, wait 20 minutes, and basically it creates, during that 20-minute window, will create a pH conversion in your system. And then what we've done with the Recovery Greens is we've added another 22 nutraceutical ingredients, basically the same as what you get in a multiple vitamin. So we have a full dose of lutein as an example. So the same dose that you would buy if you went to Nature's Fair and bought a bottle of lutein at Nature's Fair, it's 3 milligram dose of lutein, which is the same as what's in Recovery Greens. The lutein is there for eyesight. There's lots of great clinical data that shows how it protects the actual eyes, the same as lycopene. Being an athlete, you're outside in the sunlight, racing, training. Any ways to help protect the eyes are a good thing. There's also a full serving of the standardized beetroot extract in there. So if any of you guys have heard of like a product like Beat It or Alt Red, we have the same dose of the citrulline extract that's in Alt Red in Recovery Greens that's been put through our centrifugal extraction unit. So we've actually removed the sugar from that, where theirs still has the sugar with the citrulline, but you're getting the full dose of these nutraceutical ingredients along with all your green vegetables. One serving of Recovery Greens is between 6 and 7 full servings of vegetables at under 15 calories. So, even if you're fasting, if you're doing, fat adapted or doing fasted workouts in the morning, taking your greens and our greens in the morning won't break your fast. But if you, went to, again, Nature's Fair and bought a bottle of, Greens Plus, or if you bought, I'm drawing a blank on the other greens. Pick any greens, doesn't really matter. They all, they're great products and they have the nutrients in there, but they also have all the sugars, which stops that conversion process in your body. So we've also got a new flavor of Recovery Greens that's going to be available in about 3 or 4 weeks, which is raspberry lemonade. It's in production now. We're just waiting for testing, our finished product testing, because it has to go through all the finished product drug testing. It takes, anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks typically for the final drug test to come back, and we can't release a product until those tests are through. So raspberry lemonade will be added back into the mix very, very soon, as well as a couple other flavors of glycodurants. So both mango and green apple are done. We're just waiting for the drug testing on those, as well as mango hydrodurants. That one is also completed. We're just waiting for drug testing. So all of those flavors should be back available again within the next 4 weeks-ish. But recovery greens, it definitely works. It's something, again, you can take it first thing in the morning to create that pH conversion, or you can take it post as part of your recovery to put those nutrients and all those vitamins and minerals and nutraceuticals and all of the lignans, flavonoids, and vitamins and minerals from the greens into your system, as free radical scavenging. As your body goes through the recovery mode, it releases all these free radicals. And, by utilizing the greens, it's a way of extracting those free radicals from your system.
One more question. Do you anticipate adding caffeine to any of the products?
Sorry, I missed that.
Any anticipation of adding caffeine to anything along the way?
Yes. We do have a new caffeine that we are actually, again, waiting for the final testing to come out, which should happen in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be in a pill format to start with. And then there will be a powdered version coming. It's just, it doesn't taste very good. So putting it in powder is kind of tough at the moment until we can kind of master a way of flavoring our way around it. But basically what it is a caffeine that has 4 parts to it. Your standard caffeine has basically three parts to it. Our new caffeine has 4. So you get the same energy boost that you would from caffeine, but you don't get that sudden drop off. So it creates more of a bell curve. Same fairly rapid increase of energy that you would get from regular caffeine, just not the quick and harsh drop off that you see in regular caffeine. But really one of the most critical portions of this new product is that you get all those energy boosting benefits of the caffeine without increasing heart rate or blood pressure. One of the things that you typically get with regular caffeine is you'll see anywhere between a 10 to 18% increase of both heart rate and blood pressure when you're taking a fairly significant dose of caffeine. You won't get that with our product. There is 0 effect on heart rate and blood pressure. So it is coming out. We've just recently got our patents on it. So it is in development on several other products. But like I said, it's kind of a nasty tasting product. So we're having a little bit of a challenge flavoring it and keeping it 100% natural. So that's why initially when it launches, it'll be in a capsule format. And you can just take it as a capsule. But it will be coming in some other things. We do have a pre that will come out soon. And it also in our gels that will come out later this year. 2 of those will be caffeinated as well with that caffeine in it. But supply chain has wreaked havoc on a lot of new products. Everything looked great on paper, when we developed them. And now as, we kind of put the brakes on several items, during COVID. And, now as we try to get things re-resurrected, we're finding, huge supply chain delays, whether it's packaging, our gels, it was initially packaging that created all of our issues. We were 13, almost 14 months waiting for packaging from when we placed our PO. It was placed, the initial PO, we planned on launching the gels last spring. And at the time, back in 2000, when we were in 2001, when we were working on it, the film guy that makes the actual packaging for the gels said, like 60-day lead time. And that was 15 months lead time is what we ended up with. And now we've run into a couple other supply chain issues with a few ingredients and flavors, trying to find enough flavors to do certain things. Our mango, that was one of the delays on mango, because of the source that we use for our mango. It comes out of the Dole plantation. We use Dole's actual mango out of Hawaii, but they don't extract it there. It goes to a company in New York for extraction. And they were, 8 months behind. So some of the supply chains are starting to come together, but it's been challenging. It's hard to change a flavor. I'm sure all of you guys, you find a flavor that you like our chocolate, our vegan chocolate as an example. People loved our vegan chocolate, and we were forced to change flavors because we couldn't get the chocolate that we had used for 7 years in vegan chocolate. And you would be amazed at the nasty emails I was getting. Like, people were losing their minds because I changed the chocolate flavor in their favorite vegan proteins. So it's kind of a catch-22. You want to have it out there for people, and they're mad when you change it, and they're equally as mad when they're out of stock and you don't have their favorite product. So
Yeah, rocking a hard place, eh, Greg?
it is kind of that way. So we've tried our best, and we've changed some, but some it's so hard. Like mango glyco. It had historically been our number one selling product. So to change the flavor, people would just lose their minds. And it worked so well. It was that mango glyco was one of the very few products that you could use if it got hot. For races and stuff like that. That was our main race product. That typically, if we're doing like Ironman Calgary, that would typically be what we would use on course, because we can't necessarily control the temperature. We try to keep it cold, but when you've got a day that's 35 degrees, Celsius, nothing stays warm for that long or cold for that long. It all gets warm. And I'm sure you've all tried, warm lemon lime Gatorade and how lovely that is. So we're excited to have that one back. Again, like I mentioned, we are on course, at a number like the Victoria Half, Ironman Calgary, locally in your area, obviously, the Cherry Blossom. Some cycling events. We are the on course for the Okanagan Grand Fondo, which is the former Axel Merck Grand Fondo. Hasn't been officially announced yet, but we are the on course nutrition for the RBC Whistler Grand Fondo for the next 3 years. So we've taken that one over from the disaster that was last year when the nutrition company didn't send any product to them, and people were eating green bananas off the side of the road. So we're going to make that a much better experience for this year. And then there's several other ones coming. There's a couple gravel races. So the Okanagan Graveler, we're on course for that. The X Fondo in Whistler, Xterra Whistler. You'll certainly see us at a lot of events this summer, both running and cycling. And if you want to travel back east, we're on course at pretty much every triathlon, in Ontario. We work with both Multisport Canada for all of their events, including Barrowman, as well as the Somersault Series, which is out of Eastern Ontario and kind of Western Quebec area. They got some great races up there. We're actually doing one of their races in 2 weeks called Winterman. So it's the last Boston qualifier in North America for this year's Boston race in the middle of the winter. Which last year it was minus 26 degrees on race day, so it was an interesting experience trying to figure out. We never had that experience of having to have everything frozen on us. You'd basically all the jugs at all the aid stations, the nozzles froze. We're scooping the glycodurants out, but we had to have somebody that just all they did was stir the glasses, because within 2 minutes they would turn to slushies. So it was a fun experience, but it's a great race. It's great. It's attached to Winterlude in downtown Ottawa. So it's a 10-day party, that kind of finishes with this 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then the Boston qualifying marathon. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, we really appreciate you taking some time to give everybody the info on all the products, and hopefully we've covered any questions that anybody has. Like Greg said, if anybody has anything else, you can either ask me or Corey, and we'll get it on to Greg and make sure we've got some answers for everybody as we move into the season. I'm sure things will come up on how to mix, where to mix, and what to mix. But we're always here as a resource at the spa for anybody that's got any questions that's on the Zoom call as well. I've got a pretty good handle on how things roll. So again, Greg, I'll leave you to it. And yeah, if we have any questions, we will absolutely be reaching out.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Good luck in your training.
Thanks again.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
There we go. Okay. So, yeah, so with the Tri Club becoming part of the F2C Endurance family, we got a little bit of a few other benefits involved. I did upload a document to the Facebook group, which highlights all of the other discounts that we get from some of the partners that F2C's developed over the years. And so we will be getting some support from Rudy Project, which is, I know, being a Triathlon BC club, all of our triathlon members are members of Tri BC. We already get a discount through Tri BC, but the F2C discount is a slight bit more than that with Rudy Project. There's instructions on how to set up your account on the Rudy Project website. So that's helmets, sunglasses. They've got some kit, but primarily helmets and sunglasses with them. Then they are in the process of switching over from Roka as their wetsuit sponsor to Blue 70. So we're going to have access to a fairly nice discount with Blue 70, and I would imagine that's going to include everything from their swim caps to pretty much any of the products that they offer, but primarily for wetsuits and things like that. Then we have access to 2 different rental car companies. So if anybody is traveling to a race and wants to get a cheap rental, we've got access to Avis and one other one. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But those are going to be kind of some main bonuses for us, as well as Zelios. Zelios does sunscreen and shampoo and conditioner and that kind of stuff. Most of them are geared towards anti-chlorine or, from being in the pool. Really good products. I hear nothing but good things from all the F2C endurance team members about how amazing the Zelios products are. So they're based out of the US, and there may be some logistics in getting them up here, but primarily that's how that's going to work. I'll make sure that we get all those discounts into an email. I'll get all that information over to Corey so he can pass it out over email as well. So it's not just sitting in the Facebook group, because I know not everybody is utilizing Facebook for communication purposes or at all. On another note, because I happen to own the recovery spa, and we've been partnered with F2C since our conception because of the quality of their products, we've decided that we'll also be offering our support to club members over the season for 2023. Not only will you be able to come to the spa and buy all of your products here with the KTC 20 discount code that F2C has offered, but you'll also be able to take a 15% discount off any treatments or services that we have here at the spa as well. I'll go into a little bit of detail, and I may actually save a little bit more of that for another chat. I may even just do a Facebook Live and record it and send it out, just because we're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes of fantastic information. But primarily, we're going to help with post-workout recovery, any injury recovery, as well as performance and sleep. So if you're dealing with anything in those realms or have any questions, you can always reach out to myself or pop by the spa, and we'd be happy to chat, or approach me on the pool deck. I'm the guy with all the tattoos, and I'm only there from 6 until 7 a.m. So aside from that, I'm not going to drag this on any longer than we need to. But if anybody has any questions, fire us an email. You can always get a hold of Corey, so bombard his inbox. He'll pass them on if he doesn't have answers to it, or he'll just forward the emails to me, and we'll deal with that. But again, we always keep a fair good stock of F2C here at the Recovery Spa. So if you don't want to deal with shipping to your house, you can always come in. If I don't have it in stock, we'll add it to a list, and I'll be placing an order on a weekly basis. And it's usually only about a 4 or 5 day turnaround to get stuff in that we don't have in stock. And that way we can just, take advantage of not having to pay for shipping. If you want it to go straight to your house, by all means, you can order it straight through the F2C website. So I think I got all of that information out in record time. If anybody on the Zoom has any questions for me right now, that would be awesome. Let me know. Did I miss anything? Any questions here? Well, we can chat for a little bit. You guys are going to hang out and do some samples. For anybody on the call right now, thank you very much for popping in and joining us. This will all go into some video on the website and the Facebook group, or not on the website. Corey will do something with the video. We'll get it out so everybody has access. I know I'm volunteering Corey for a lot of things that come down to this, but appreciate you guys in your time, and I will see everybody on the pool deck tomorrow. So have a good night.